Hey, it's me back again with another one of these. It's been a bit, things have been busy, but today I'm covering a topic I've gotten several requests for, which is thumbnailing and paneling. Comics stuff, which is what I'm supposed to be talking about. These are typically the first steps one takes when making a comic page aside from scripting, so they're kind of important to know about. Anyway, let's get into this then. A lot of people I've met don't necessarily know what thumbnailing is, so basically it's just doing a quick sketch of the page before you do a bigger sketch of it. Usually I do mine on paper. Some people do theirs digitally, but it's just like a tiny sketch where you basically just block out where the characters are, usually where the word balloons will be, the paneling arrangement of the page. It's a pretty simple concept. Not everybody I know thumbnails. A lot of people I know just script and then go straight to sketch. I like the thumbnail because sketching is something that gives me trouble frequently, and I like to not have to start from exactly zero looking at a blank document when I start my page. Usually I thumbnail in like chunks. I thumbnail a whole scene out and then I sketch it. I have this little tiny baby sketchbook that I use to thumbnail in. I carry it around with me if I'm going to be waiting somewhere for a long time. I will usually thumbnail um, while I'm waiting. That's where I get my thumbnails done. I find them really useful, but again, they're not necessary to making comics, and you can make perfectly fine comics without thumbnailing. They're just useful for me. In general, with thumbnails, you don't need to worry about making them pretty or even readable to anybody but you, unless you're collaborating with someone and doing the thumbnails, then they're going to need to be readable to your collaborators. But the main point of thumbnailing is just to get your ideas down. I do frequently. Sometimes I will thumbnail a page in like a flurry of inspiration, and then when it comes time to sketch it out, I like look back and I'm like, I don't know what's going on here. Excuse me, pass me. What's up? What's up with that? So do watch out for that. Do try to make it clear. But yeah, that's basic. That's the basics of thumbnailing. It's not really a complicated concept. Now on to paneling. Paneling's a topic that I feel less confident in because only very recently, within about the last year, did I start feeling like I was actually improving with my panels. I was kind of stuck in a rut for like a good, like 5 or 6 years. I've been doing comics way too long. Like 5 or 6 years where my paneling just felt kind of stagnant and I couldn't really break out of the box. So I'm not exactly the world's most premier paneling expert. The basics of paneling, in general, it's pretty simple to explain. The panels are those little boxes or triangles or circles or whatever shape you want them to be, things that the art of comics in the comic pages goes into. Usually in between panels, there's a gutter, but not always. The gutter is the space in between the panels. For the first half of my first comic, Two-Faced, I didn't have gutters, really. I just kind of put the panels right next to each other with only a black line in between them, and I didn't really like that. Then for the second half of the comic, I did the gutters by having one panel be a bleed, which is when the panel goes to the edge of the page and isn't confined by a border of a panel, and then the gutters, the other panels were on top of that, which looks neat, but like it was kind of work intensive, and I prefer working the way I do with Fragile now, where it's mostly gutters that are one color, and if I want to do a bleed, then I do a bleed for specific moments of effect. Generally, the most important thing to worry about with paneling is clarity. Like, I cannot stress it enough. Your readers need to be able to know which way to read the page, and it doesn't matter how fancy you make it, how inspired or dynamic. If your readers can't read the page, then you failed. So I usually err on the side of caution, which is maybe why I stagnated for so long. And in general, I think the creativeness of your panels matters less than the content that you're putting in there, which is not to say that you shouldn't try and break out of the box, so to speak, with your panels. I feel a lot more satisfied with my pages now that I'm trying new stuff. Doing like fancy and dynamic stuff in your panels can really make big moments pop, which is you kind of want to save some of your stuff for the big moments instead of using really super dynamic, super creative, super groundbreaking panel design for every single page, because then when you want to make a moment pop, it's not going to pop as much. There's a lot you can convey with the size and placement of your panels, and also with your gutters. There's some pretty simple ways to convey emotion through paneling, like the basic thing of if the scene is calm, make the panel borders straight. If the characters are a little more angry, antsy, or there's action, make the panel borders diagonal. And there are like more complicated ways of doing it. A favorite technique of mine that I started doing again pretty recently is panel borders to convey emotional distance, which is it's a pretty simple thing that I do, and it's probably super obvious and probably super basic, but I like it. I will put panel borders between two characters in the same shot to convey that, they've got a wall between them. Either that, or I will make the borders in between two panels bigger if I want to emphasize how long it is between the two moments, how long the two moments are taking. Bigger panels are always they're going to take up more space of the page, so they're going to feel like bigger moments. They're going to feel like longer or more important. So if you want to emphasize something, and making the panel bigger is always a good way to do that. Or if you want to ease into a scene, usually establishing shots I usually make them a big, like you can see that the three panels on this page I'm working on right now are big panels. Usually if I'm doing an establishing shot, I will make the panels like that. In general, you don't want to overcrowd your pages. You don't want to have a huge amount of panels unless you're going for an overcrowding effect. I try to stay about, not go super high over 6 panels. For a while in the formula, I was stuck in pretty much all my pages would only be 6 panels. Sometimes they'd be 5 panels. Sometimes they'd be 4 panels. But usually they'd be about 6 panels, and it was boring, and I didn't like it. And I'm glad that I've gotten a little better at making my pages more varied in terms of layout. But yeah, those are the basics of paneling and thumbnails. Hopefully this has been helpful to anybody who's interested in comics and wanted to know basically the basics of that. I'm not an expert by any means. I've just been doing comics for a long time and I really like them. If you have any other topics you want me to cover, be sure to leave them in the comments. I'm always looking for more topics to talk about here. And if you like my comic, consider supporting me on Patreon. All right, till next time.